Welcome back, comrades. Hope everyone's doing great. Uh-oh. There it is. Okay, sorry, my script was coming up. So, we're here to finish up the Holy Kingdom arc in Overlord, the light novel series. And then next week, I think that's how I have it scheduled, we're going to review the movie that came out in the last couple of years that is both these books. I've already covered the other seasons of Overlord, at least the third one on this channel. I might have watched the first two seasons like too long ago, but I almost feel like I rewatched all of them and discussed them, but maybe not. But anyhow, so we can compare and contrast how the movie is to like how the book is, and I can see all the characters that I misunderstood how they looked based on the audiobook, right? And it's just interesting. I think about it more and more because I read comics and then I listen to books. And like reading is by far the superior way for me to ingest media, that or comics. Like looking at something with my eyes, I'm much more of like it's just much more easy for my brain to process things when I'm like focused and paying attention, like looking, right? Because oftentimes, and part of the problem is like, you know, I'm never just like laying in a hammock with my eyes closed listening to a book, like living in this dream world. I'm always doing some other shit, right? Like I'm playing like Europa Universalis or Crusader Kings or some other, you know, strategy game that's like a chill thing to do, or like, you know, Atelier or like management sim or some shit like that, or just like grinding it out in like a role-playing game or whatever. So, or, you know, just kind of like doing other shit. Like even if I'm just driving, I'm like thinking about stuff. It's like harder for my brain. It's harder for me to like focus my attention wholly on what's going on in the audiobook than it is if I'm like reading something. Like I'm not one of those people, some people like they kind of like zone out when they're reading. I do not. As long as I have something to like focus my attention on, my visual attention, then I'm good to go. So sometimes I'm just kind of like, I'm hearing the story and like whatever, and I'm getting like like nuances, but like when they start doing like character descriptions or just kind of like lore dumping, I definitely like check out. I'll do that when I'm reading too. Like I'll start flipping through pages. I do this a lot with like sex scenes. Like I'm definitely, now anyone who follows me on BitChute at least, or kind of more regularly here, you know, I'm like a connoisseur of visual novels of the adult variation. I feel like I'm kind of a connoisseur of visual novels generally, but visual novels tend to be more erotic, period, than other games generally, right? And so it just comes up a lot, right? But again, I'm a man. So visually, as long as there's like hot babes, I'm like, all right, cool, sounds good. Like I'll play Nayah and be like, God damn, I gotta spend $20 on this fucking Sora skin when Sora's like a delisting character because she's hot as shit. And this new skin like blew my mind when I saw it. And I'm like, God, thank God this isn't a gacha skin, even though I spend money on those. But to me, the gacha skin thing, I know this is a total tangent. The gacha skin thing in Nayah is almost like, here is my monthly service fee to play so that you will keep making this game forever. I view it almost like I used to spend like at least $30 a month because I was playing World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy 14, and that's when World of Warcraft started like going downhill, like back in the day. Because I played 11 before that, but that was cheaper. That was only like $12 a month. Anyway, and then Final Fantasy went down the hill with Dawnbreak or whatever the fucking expansion is, like I've discussed, like I think in the last video for this. Anyway, sorry, I get kind of in a tangent because I usually am recording these videos in the morning on my drive to work, and so I have like a lot of thoughts in my head because I spent like an hour playing an Atelier game or something else while on my my little bikey to wake myself up in the morning, and then it's like all that caffeine I drink to wake up, and then here we go. Okay, so anyway, let's focus everybody. So we're back with Nayah and Ainz and the rest of the crew of Remedios and Gunther? It's not Gunther. Gustav. And Demiurge and whatnot in the battle for the Holy Kingdom, right? We start actually with the monster leaders. There's like these three strong leaders. One's like a mage lady, one's like just a big bro town, and the other one's like also a strong guy, but not as strong as like the big guy. I don't remember any of their names or exactly what kind of monsters they were. I just remember that one of them's like a magic caster and the two are kind of bruisers. The second bruiser is like a monk, and the main bruiser is like, I think he fights with a sword. I think that's right. Anyway, they kind of do a little recap, the plan. They talk about how Yaldabaoth and his plan and stuff, and how he wants survivors, and how like these like monster groups are like jockeying for like power positions, but these three are like the most powerful or something. And so they're just talking about how, like, you know, they're not like a huge fan of this whole situation, but it's not bad because it's like, oh, they finally get to get rid of these like stupid humans and stuff who are just like always trying to attack them and pester them and whatnot. And we kind of learn that they're like, at least the big guy, the main guy, who's like the main leader for all the monster races, he is like not a bad guy. He's like an honorable fighter, and like he comes from like a long lineage of like super fighters that are all, you know, yada yada yada, and that good stuff. But the other two are kind of like more evilly, and that isn't. I bring that up not because it's actually relevant, because we deal with Remedios and like her paladin powers a bit in this book, a bit more than the previous book, and it comes up that like she uses like an attack that like does more damage based on like how evil the defender is, and it does like virtually no damage to like the main bad guy here, because he's not actually a bad guy, he's just a guy leading his people and stuff, right? It's kind of like that mole people, like they seem evil to the doors, but vice versa, they, you know, versa evil there, right? But then like the guy who's like the head of the mole people, he's actually just like a bro. We actually get some of him and like we get him and some of Jekny like just kicking it, relating to how like powerful Ainz is and how they're just like, all right, well, we're gonna lead these people, and like we got fucked, and it's like, oh, let's go get drunk and like be sad about it. I might have written it down in these notes. If not, it was a great scene. It's like this intermission, and they're just like, this is so fucking funny. Anyway, let's say talk, more control. Okay, so they're gonna head out and attack this city that the humans took back in like a couple of days. So over with the humans, Nayah is watching. Let's see. She's watching a slaughter. Let's see. Vomits, cleans it up, then heads to Ainz. Why did she slaughter? He is staying out. Oh, that's right. They're in the middle of like a battle. Okay, so we jump ahead. That's right. And now there's a battle, and the monsters and the humans are just like killing the shit out of each other. It makes Nayah wretch. She cleans it up. Then she goes to see Ainz. He's like staying out of this whole situation. He's not being involved with the council. He's like resting for the battle with Yaldabaoth and getting his mana back and stuff. And so the siege continues without his help and whatnot. So they talk. Nayah and Ainz talk about the siege. They talk about Remedios and the monsters. Now the monsters are like very strong and stuff. And let's see, they talk about. Oh, okay, sorry, no, this is not. It's Nayah in the council chamber. They talk about the royal that was saved, Gaspon, something like that, and how important he is. And he is like the brother. He's like the brother of the previous Holy Mother, and so like technically he should take the throne, but because the South is like opposed to the North still being in control, and because of Game of the Thrones shit, like that might not happen. At some point, Ainz goes to talk to like Remedios, and he's like, "Oh, you should come over to." What happens here? Some speech about duty and righteousness. I gets quiet. Says he likes. Oh, okay. Yeah, Ainz like makes some comment about Remedios coming to be like a paladin in his kingdom, and she's like, absolutely not. Or no, Nayah. He's like, oh, you should be a paladin in my kingdom, Nayah. Oh god, I got so confused here. My notes are very bad right now. I apologize. Okay, so read. Okay, so yeah, so Nayah, so the council's talking about all this shit, and Nayah goes to visit Ainz. Ainz and her talk about the same shit, and they talk about how she should come to his kingdom to be a paladin, but she's like, I can't leave my people here, and he loves the fact that she is so invested in like being honorable and all this stuff, and like, you know, he's like, oh, maybe her like bitch face is not like, you know, the resting cunt face is not like as bad, like maybe she's not so angry or whatever. So he thinks about that and decides that he likes the way she looks. And then so he gives her more items. He gives her like this armor that they got from the boss of the last thing, the Medusa guy or whatever, as well as some other things like a helmet that protects against like psychic attacks and possession or something, and a whole bunch of like, and like a visor so people can't like, they're not going to see her like angry face as much, so she looks not so intimidating and whatnot. And when she puts it all on, she's like, wow, I feel like I'm full of magical energy and like this is crazy. And that she feels like all this power like whelming up inside of her, and she's like, god damn, and she gets like super dramatic about the whole thing. And then they talk about losing the items, and now she doesn't want to take them because she might lose them or she might die, and he's like, no, I'll come find them eventually, don't worry about it. Later on, they go to the defense council. Yep, okay, I figured it out. Remedios is talking about the plans and then gets interrupted by Gustav because he has bad news. The people want the King of Darkness to participate, and this means they trust in him more than they trust in the paladins, and he is their hero, and then some people even call him their savior. They discuss what to do and how the King of Darkness seems to have planned out this whole thing, and that, Remedios gets super upset because, the paladins, people need to trust the paladins and the Holy Mother and yada, 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 and they're trusting some undead, and she hates the undead, and something and whatnot. And so they have to defend the city. They have to do it without his help. They have to go. The paladins have to prove their worth and prove they don't need this King of Darkness or anything, or they're going to lose the right to rule. And Gaspard is talking about this as well with them. Over with Nayah, she gets stopped by a guy and told where to go. She gets super confused about this because she's like, well, shouldn't I go over there? And he's like, no, you're supposed to go over there. And she's like, oh, okay, sure, that's fine. Because at some point, Ainz is like, oh, okay, I didn't tell Demiurge to save anybody in this siege, but I actually want her to be saved, so I'm going to send her to the part of the wall or whatever that's going to be less damaged or something. And then she goes, but then they tell her to go somewhere else. And then, let's see. And then, these guys who are just, carrying a pot of food around, one of them stops and wants to talk to her because she's, the aide of the King of Darkness, and the paladin, let's see, they decided to talk to them. Okay, yeah. And so then the paladin's like, no, she needs to go over there, something, and she gets mad at him, and it's like, no, if they want to talk about the King of Darkness, I'll talk about it. And so she does. And then they talk about, how her, along with the king, were able to defeat that monster and free the town, and about how she's only a paladin in training and stuff. At that point, she heads over to her place. While there, she thinks about all the stuff that has happened, about the King of Darkness, about their situation, the siege, and how she's, she's probably going to die, and she's ready to die. At that point, the battle begins. Some ogres come out with ballistas. They kill some dudes. Nayah uses the Star Singer bow or whatever to strike back. So there's some back and forth, fight. This book's a lot of siege battles, more battles, and then fighting, and then more fighting. Nayah kills guys till she runs out of arrows, and then at some point she gets blasted because she gets saved by the armor that Ainz gave her. And then she has some magic spell from one of these items as well. Or no, I think she just has magic because she's a paladin in training. But it's going to take a lot of her mana to do it. She's got 1 point to do it. And then but at this, she keeps thinking about it, and then at this point she's like, I have to use it right now, after she got blasted, and then blasted again by attacks and what this stuff. And then some asshole rolls up and kills a paladin near her. So Nayah rushes around to find some arrows, and then kills this boss monster with one shot, one punch mans him in the face with with her bow. And then she announces her victory, and no one applauds this because everyone's in the middle of a fight, and she feels really embarrassed and stuff. And it's damn girl, people are dying. Stop trying to be an anime show and a tag. That's what kind of book this is. But she keeps killing people for a while because she got more bow arrows and stuff. And then she realizes that all these monsters are avoiding her as she's wearing that I think his name's Boostier's armor or whatever, and they're all scared because they were all scared of Booster or whatever his fucking name is. And if she killed him, she must be even stronger than him because he was super strong. She then recalls how Ainz told her about going to the East Gate, and then things get real crazy, and she's like, no. And so she keeps fighting. The subhumans start amassing on her to like kill her. They're all gonna like jump her at one time. Let's see. And then the militia surrounds her because they believe that she is like, you know, as the person who's blessed by like Ainz, and she's taken a bunch of shots and she's been killing dudes and like training dudes and stuff. But the militia is like the conscripts, right? And so they get just like absolutely slaughtered as she's trying to like keep fighting, and they're fighting, and then they all die, and they beg her to leave, but instead she charges forward into the enemy and takes several more mortal blows. We then have Remedios and Gustav. Remedios is thinking about fighting and killing, and she's like, I can kill like 10,000 of these warriors with my like sword and all that stuff. But the only thing that can really stop her, in her opinion, is Yaldabaoth, which is not true. As we'll soon find out. As she gets ready to go out and slaughter with like her, you know, I'm the best paladin in the kingdom kind of sword and abilities, and her like magic sword and all that shit, she gets stopped because like the three guys from like the very beginning of the book, they roll up, and they're clearly the leaders. And then there's like some back and forth there. She does some like power level matching, and she sees that each one of them is like as powerful as her. So like if she tries to fight all three of them, she's gonna get fucked. But that the main one is like more strong, like as strong, if not stronger than her, while the other two are less strong. And she thinks that if she can kill the main, she can distract the other two, she can kill the main guy, she can handle the other two. But if all three of them attack her at the same time, she's going to get fucked. And so there's some like back and forth with that. They jaw jack for a bit. Some other paladins come up to like support Remedios in like the battle. There's some like shonen squaring off stuff. Okay, so then she's holding her own against the main guy. Like she's doing pretty good. Like she's not like getting ahead, but he's not getting ahead either. And then the two paladins that came with her get like slaughtered, and then more paladins go out and they get slaughtered, and they're just trying to hold off the other two, but they keep getting like absolutely destroyed because they're not even close to being as powerful. And then the other two like kill all the paladins, and so they start heading towards the militia. So she tries to stop them, but because she's trying to stop them, the guy gets like offended. He's like, "You don't think you have to pay like attention to me, so I'm going to teach you a lesson." So he keeps like blocking her and fighting her. And then she's like, and this is the part where she's like, "I'm going to use the super powerful light attack, which is like an ultimate move, and like the more evil you are, the more damage you do, and it also blinds you and whatnot." And so she does it, and it's this epic like shonen anime like attack that's like the ultimate move, and it does absolutely nothing. It like barely hurts him. He's like, "Oh, was that supposed to hurt?" But then, and he's not even blinded at all. So clearly he's not evil at all. Like he might be like a little bit of a miscreant, like he threw eggs at passing cars at like on like a library roof when he was like a teenager. But like, and she was like stunned by this. The other two are like blinded, and because obviously they're like more evil. But then they kind of recover, and the caster lady, they're not like super bad evil, right? They're just like kind of evil. So then the caster lady casts like a fireball on the humans, but right as it's about to pound into them, Ainz shows up and like cancels it out. And then Remedios is like super mad at this point. Like she's like losing her mind because of the undead and how much she hates undead and all this stuff. And she's like, "Why wasn't he here earlier? That asshole, like he could have saved these paladins and he could have taken these people. Like, why is he such an asshole or whatever?" And she's like super mad. And then she's like, "I'm going to leave." And she takes the militia and like leaves. And she's like, "You take this by yourself." And we switch over to Ainz' perspective that time. And he's like, "What the fuck, that dumb cunt." And he's like, "I came here, the whole part, like I could have gone and saved Nayah, who's like dead now, but I came over here because like clearly I did the math. Remedios is much more powerful, and I thought she'd be at least like a little bit like grateful, but she's not. She's being a total cunt." So he gets pissed, and then he's just like standing there thinking about all this, and then the subhuman monsters are like, "Hey, stop ignoring us!" And he's like, "Death, death, death." But when he casts insta death on the wizard lady, she doesn't die immediately, and he's like, "Well, that's weird." So he just like kills her with like normal attacks. And he continues to think about like the Remedios situation and how he was watching this whole time. He's making a dramatic entrance and all this stuff, but it like did not work at all. Meanwhile, we go back to Nayah, and she's like in a dark place, and she starts to feel warmth, and then she starts to feel like she's being drawn out of something, and then she sits up, and Ainz is there, and then he throws like a bunch of potions on her and stuff, and then he kills like some subhumans that are like just standing around like some of these monster people, and then he starts talking about justice and whatnot, and then she starts talking about like justice. And she gets like, "You are justice. You are the epitome of justice." And he's like, "What the fuck?" Like, bring it down, girl. He's like, "Anyway, you rest here. I'm gonna go like finish the rest of this battle." And so some other paladins who didn't die, because the ones with Remedios, that wasn't like all the paladins. That was just the ones that were with her. They come grab Nayah to take her away so she can get healed some more, because she clearly just got resurrected, which is like a huge deal. And as we know, like being most of the time when you resurrect somebody, it at least in this world, it drains you of like levels and stuff. But then we follow Ainz at this point, and he thinks about how he used like a special wand, and he used a ring with like a super wand, because he had like resurrected some lizardmen before when they died, but they like just evaporated into dust because they clearly didn't have enough levels and stuff. And so he actually likes Nayah, and he didn't want her to like fade into dust, and so he did like a true resurrection, which doesn't cost her like any energy or any levels or anything like that, to make sure. And he's like, "I might have gone overboard with this whole thing, but I have a wand, and it's a faith wand, and I have to use this ring to like use a faith wand," and then I like charged it and all that. It's like all that kind of like World of Warcraft bullshit about like I gotta eat this meat, and then I eat this, and then I take this potion, and then I take this elixir, and now we fight the boss, and now I've got like immunity to this, and I do extra damage versus like fish people or whatever. Excuse me. And he thinks about how he should have come and helped her first, because fuck Remedios and whatnot. But he's like, "I think she's grateful, but her eyes make her look so angry, and it's hard to really tell." But Remedios is a cunt, so fuck her. So he thinks about how he needs to do more stuff to meet up with Demiurge and Albedo back in Nazarick to kind of plan the next steps and whatnot. So he gathers up all these magic items. He sends like undead into like the enemy camp and just decimates them. And at some point he's like in his tent, like getting ready to like teleport out of there, and he gets interrupted by Nayah, and she's like, "I'm here to serve." And he's like, "Later, I got a meeting to go to." And she's like, "Yes, master." And so she leaves, and he thinks about Inferia using Momon's advice for sex, and I'm like, what the fuck? Where did this come from? So apparently we all know Inferia and Henri are like fucking, and they're like married and stuff. And he remembers like as Momon, Inferia's like, "Hey, can I talk to you?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure, what's up?" And he's like, "So about sex." And what is it, Sasuke something, like the Japanese man who lives inside Ainz is like, what am I supposed to tell this kid? I've barely had sex my entire life and I'm like a dead monster. So he's like telling him, and he's like, "Oh, it was super awkward." And then at some point Inferia developed like a Viagra potion. And he's like, "Ooh, this is great. I'm gonna give it to the lizard men so they can have more like super babies like Lulu." Or is it Lulu? No, it's not Lulu, it's Lululemon. Crush Lulu. It is Lulu. Okay, Crush Lulu, yeah. Anyway, we then bounce over to this Gaspare guy who's like the leader of the Holy Kingdom, or like he's the brother, right? And the Paladins and the remains of the Northern leadership meet up. They talk about Ainz saving the day. Remedia loses it again. Like, he didn't do everything. We did stuff too. We lost Paladins. She's like really losing her mind. And then someone's like, "Hey, how about you go to your paladin and care for the wounded?" And then she leaves, and Gustav's like, "I'm sorry, bro." And he's like, "Bro." They didn't talk about like their next steps. Like, okay, we have these prison camps around here, and we have this place like secure. We held off the siege, destroyed a bunch of leaders. Maybe we should just take paladins and go like kind of clean it up, rescue a lot of our people, and get ready for like attacking of the monsters again. And they talk about how like if they're gonna want to like actually rule after this whole thing's over, they're gonna have to show that they can actually rule, so that people don't like defect. And so they gotta like do something without the King of Darkness. And there's also the South to be considered, right? So maybe it'd be better if he did take over, or who knows, whatever, right? Either way, it's not the best thing. They also talk about his sister, how she may be alive, because that would be the best outcome, because that would just end the secession crisis and all that. Anyway, over with Ainz, he teleports to like a cabin they have set up over by Nazarick. And there he meets with Lupus Regina, with Demiurge, with Albedo. They talk about the attack, how Ainz spoiled it. He's like, "Oh, sorry for spoiling like your plan." And then Demiurge and Albedo are both like, "Oh no, whatever, you could never spoil anything. If you did it, I'm sure it was the right decision." And he's like, "God damn it." And then they start talking about him being dead, like what are they going to do when he's dead, and something about, like someone says something about like, "Oh, we gotta, sometimes you keep us on our toes so that we can get better." And he thinks about doing training, right? Like when they did the training for the defenses of Nazarick in like book 8, I want to say, with the workers, right? That whole thing was just like, "Oh, how are our defenses if we got invaded by a bunch of guys looking pretty good?" And he's like, "What would you guys do if I like disappeared or I died?" And they're like, "Oh, you would never die, blah 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 blah." And he's like, "What? No, what if I was captured? What if something? I want this to." And then, it's like, after me, it's like the next best planner is Demiurge. So what if Demiurge and I were gone? Like, what would you do, Albedo? Like, and she's like, "I don't know." And he's like, "We need to figure it out. So we need to do some practice." So he wants to practice what the reaction to people would be and how they would do, and like kind of get like, it's like a safety drill or whatever. We talk about some other things. And he finally like builds up the courage to tell Albedo that he doesn't want the statue of him in Arantel. And she's like, "Okay, sounds good." And he's like, "Oh, that was a lot easier than I thought." And then they also talk about the level 80 demon that Demiurge summoned to be like him, and how he's going to attack the city soon and stuff. And that they talk about how he wants like a real fight. He doesn't want him to like just pretend, because people are going to be watching, and he wants to make it cool. And he also just kind of wants to see how his like martial training's going, because we get reminded that he's been like training himself up to be like a level 33 warrior or whatever. And that, him fighting this demon is going to like maybe help him get a little bit better as a warrior as well. And so it's for like his benefit as well as like the benefit of the people watching and whatnot. And they're like, "Cool, sounds good." We then head back over to Nayah, and she is deciding that she needs to get stronger so that she can be of value to the King of Darkness, right? She's super inspired by him. She then meets up with a bunch of militiamen who were like there when they got saved by Ainz and all this stuff, and she encourages them to get stronger so that they don't need the King of Darkness, and that they can support him and whatnot, and that they should be very grateful for everything he's did. Then Remedia comes and yells at her for talking to the King of Darkness, and they go back and forth, and then Remedia's like, and like leaves because she's a cunt. And then she decides she's going to train all these militiamen in the bow. And so we skip ahead a little bit. She's doing a lot of training. She's realizing that she is getting stronger. She's getting better at the bow, and that she's increasing like her levels and whatnot. And then a large number of guys head out to go free people from like these slave camps or whatever. And she realizes that she's becoming like a leader of like the people, right? She's training them, she's encouraging them, she's like preaching about like the King of Darkness and stuff. And at some point, Ainz like rolls up and he's like, "What's up?" And everyone's like super psyched, like fangirling out and whatnot. And we learn that the this town is like gathering up all these like slave camps and all the surrounding people that like went and hid and stuff. And it's starting to be like very overwhelmed because this village is like a village, right? I mean, this town's like a village, and that has so many people moving here that they're expanding. But it's like, you know, if it's winter, it's like cold and people don't have places to stay or whatever. But it's better to be here than out where the monsters could fight them. And then at some point, this big like firewall surrounds the city, and that announces everybody that Yaldabaoth is on his way. So Ainz grabs Nayah, and they head to Gaspar and Romidia to discuss the plan. And then Nayah hears something at some point, and what she hears is that the wall, while they're all discussing the plan and how to deal with Yaldabaoth and everything that's going on, like the wall like cracks open, and Yaldabaoth like, oh no, the wall explodes, and Ainz like jumps on Nayah, so she's okay. And then Yaldabaoth like comes stomping in the room, but it's like the demon, it's not Demiurge at this point. And then Romidia like runs at him, but gets knocked the fuck back. And then they start jaw-jacking some more. And then a couple of the maids show up, and Ainz is like, "Ooh, the maids, good. That's what I want." Even though he already owns them. But anyway. And they decide him and Yaldabaoth talk, and they decide they're going to fight in the town square. So then at that point, Yaldabaoth leaves. Romidia tries to stab him in the back, which does nothing. Which again, she used like her super light attack. And it's like the demon's not evil either. And she's like, "What the fuck?" And he like laughs. And then Gaspari sends Romidia off to evacuate the city. And then Nayah starts arguing with Ainz about staying with him. And he's like, "No." He's like, "Well, there might be hostages, but he takes you a hostage." And Ainz is like, "No, I'm going to head down alone." So he heads over there to meet with the demon that's pretending to be Yaldabaoth. And he's with two of the maids. And while he's headed over there, he sends a couple of his Hanzo to like check around and make sure no one's watching in the close area. Once he's sure there's nobody like spying on them, like obviously people can see them from like elsewhere, but like they can't hear them or do anything like that. Let's see. Okay, they start talking about like the Pleiades and stuff, and then he talks to the demon, and they find out that they kind of go back and forth. "Hey, you're going to fight me for real? Yeah, I'm going to fight you for real. Okay, get all you got. I'm going to try to kill you." And demon's like, "That's cool. I'm like a summoned creature. I can just come back later." And it's like, "Yeah, fair. You too, Pleiades. I'm going to fight you really hard too, but I don't want to hurt you." And they go back and forth, and we find out that they're actually doppelgangers of the Pleiades, and they have all their gear and whatnot. And so they kind of talk about that. There's no Pleiades here at all, and he thinks back to like the Hanzo when they like reported back to him. They said some funny shit, and he's like, "Oh, that's interesting." And so he still wants to preserve them because killing the doppelgangers is like fucked up because it's like resources and stuff. So even if they don't care about dying or whatever, he's like, "All right, well, I'm gonna cast a spell to like track your HP, and if I say like tap out, you're tapping out." And they're like, okay, we'll do that. Sounds good. So then they start to fight, and pretty early on, Ainz realizes he's in a trap because he gets shot by the Shizu doppelganger or whatever, and Shizu is like a long-range Pleiades. And there's actually a couple more. So there's now 4 Pleiades fighting him. There's the 2 that were with the demon. There was a hidden one, and then there's the long-range one. And we find out here that Lupus Regina is actually like a healer. And then, yeah, Solution is the other one that shows up. So it's all very clever, very clever. And Guardian... Oh, yeah, and then they talk a little bit about the Guardian of the 8th floor and how I think it's Albedo's sister, she like buffed them or whatever before they came out here. But still, it's like no problem. But it's not as easy as a fight would initially be. So there's like a lot of fighting, fight. He takes out 2 of the Pleiades. He slams the demon very hard. Meanwhile, Nayah and the others are all watching from a distance. Nayah is all hot and bothered, obviously, by everything that's going on, but not in a sexual way, just in like a respectful way, perverts. Then the demon, let's see, okay, and then they see like a blast. Someone gets blasted like way far away, and everyone's like confused about what just happened. And then the demon that's pretending to be Yaldabaoth shows up, and he's beat the shit out of, like half his face is like caved in and stuff. And he declares the King of Darkness is dead. Oh no! Nayah freaks out and shoots him with her bow, and he's like, "Ow, that actually hurt." He's like, "I'm too tired to deal with your shit. I'll come back later." The paladins and the priests and Gaspari all meet. Nayah's freaking the fuck out, talking about going to find the King Darkness, like right meow, and how he can't be dead and there's no way. And then Gaspari is finally able to like calm everyone the fuck down. They talk about their options, and they decide they need to go rescue the people and destroy the monster people in the area, and then they can meet up with the army in the south. There's a lot of planning, a lot of talking about Game of Thrones, a lot of like, oh, what can we do? How's this going to work? Like, we can't let them because this and that, and secession and all that stuff. But they finally decide to send Nayah with a subhuman to the Kingdom of Darkness to check up and notify them about what's going on. Because it seems like they got some time, because Yaldabaoth clearly seems like scared of an attack from like Momon or something. Like he needs like this. There's a whole thing about him needing the army of the like Unhumans to like actually be around and to fight, because without that he's gonna like not, he's going to be too weak to fight, or he's like concerned or whatnot, and that's why he's going out to rest instead of just killing them right now. Right, nothing else makes sense. Anyway, so at this point we hit an intermission. This is the part. Oh, I write it down. Okay, so this is the part where Jeknev is just like hanging out in Arantel, waiting to like meet with somebody, and he's thinking about being the Emperor now and how like fucking easy it is, because there's really no worries because the King of Darkness has got his back. So it's kind of just like he's just chilling. Like he doesn't have to worry about any dangers or anything. And then one of his friends shows up, and the friend is the leader of the Mole People, and they're like, oh. And then we learn how they both got bonded because of the complete domination of their people, and they're like despair about like, what do we do now? Like what's the point of my existence? Like I just like am a vassal to this guy. And so then they just like, they hang out and they're like super buddies. Like they literally see each other and they're like, friend, and they like hug it out. And then both of them are like, oh, have you heard? The King of Darkness is dead. And they both like laugh. They're like, that is so fucking retarded. I'm like, there's no way he's dead. That's stupid. True. Elsewhere, we jump to like intermission part 2. And intermission part 2, we were with the 8 fingers, right? So the prostitute lady is crying about how she has to deal with this Philip guy and how he's a total asshole, and it makes her like head hurt because he's so incompetent, and how she just wants to kill him and try again, but like it's already going on. And one of her compatriots like showing compassion because he's got to deal with like the prince and how he's kind of an asshole too, and it's just like drives them both like crazy. It's like, why can't people just fucking do what they're supposed to do? And this is not great. And they talk about the rumor of the King of Darkness, and they're like, and they both essentially laugh too. They're like, that is the dumbest fucking thing I ever heard, and I can't believe people actually believe that's real. We jump back to Nayah, who's getting some rangers ready to look for Ainz. She wants to she's got to go head to the Kingdom of Darkness first, and then she can go look, or they're going to go look while she's doing that because they got better skills and going to the forest and stuff. But so they're practicing. She's doing archery and all this stuff. She's still freaking out. She's super angry. Everyone's really intimidated by her because she's angry and she looks angry and whatnot. At some point, she gets interrupted because they want her to come to a meeting. So apparently, the Gaspar has made an alliance with one of the monster people. And kind of like with the orcs from the last book, not all the monster people are like serving Yaldabaoth willingly or whatever, right? So these guys, the Zarin or something, they're being forced to serve because Yaldabaoth has taken their king and their prince hostage. And then they found out recently that the king was killed because of some disagreement or something, or them not fighting as hard as they should have or whatever, so that now they want to ally with the humans who, if they help them rescue the prince, they will join with them. And then we also get introduced to Shizu. Shizu is the ranged Pallades, and she was apparently like taken over by Ainz before he disappeared or died, quote unquote. And now she's here because Lord Ainz has ordered her to serve and to help with this whole operation and to be with Nayah to make sure she's okay and whatnot. And so she and Nayah are going to go with the monster people in to rescue the prince. And then from there, the prince and the people will help them find Lord Ainz. And then they're going to end up going to like the Kingdom of Darkness is kind of like the plan. So later on, we get Nayah and Shizu. They're like chit-chatting about everything that's going on, about the bow, about Lord Ainz. At some point, Nayah's like, we don't even know if Lord Ainz is alive. And then Shizu's like, if he wasn't alive, I wouldn't be here helping you under his order. And then Nayah, at some point, Shizu like really gains like a like of Nayah. And so she gives her like a sticker on her forehead. And Nayah like freaks out. And she's like, don't put the sticker there. It's too obvious, blah, blah, blah. Take it off. And so Shizu does and puts it somewhere else, which is very comforting to Nayah. A bit later on, they are heading into like the subhuman camp where the prince is being held with the monster guy. Well, it's a monster gal, we find out, because the only men are like the king and the prince. And so as long as there's like one female and like the prince, they can like restart their entire species. So like keeping the prince alive is like super important because he's like the only guy, right? And so they kind of sneak in there. They get in like barrels of beans or something like that. And they're able to get in, they sneak around. There's a whole lot of detail about them doing like Solid Snake type shit, like sneaking around, being quiet, moving past enemies, getting weapons in, like how we got the bow in and all that stuff. We also get some backstory of Nayah training with like Shizu and them growing closer and closer together. anyway, back to like the present. They run into like this guard guy who's guarding with the prince's chamber. So there's this big fight, and Nayah's like holding her own a little bit, but this guy's like super strong. And then she's just like, all right, enough of this. It's like One Punch Man's the guy. They find this giant maggot, right? Who's the prince, and he's super fun and he's cool, and he's like finds out about his father and he's super sad. They meet up with the other Zarans, which I think is what they're called, and then they talk about what's the next plan. So Shizu and Nayah are going to help the prince to get all the Zarans to like rebel. They're going to flee out of here and save him, and then the Zarans are going to go to the Kingdom of Darkness, but he's going to leave some people behind to help find Ainz with Nayah and the humans. Everyone's like, cool, sounds good. But to get everybody out of here, to like make a successful rebellion, they're going to have to kill one of the minions of Yaldabaoth, some guy who collects heads and uses them for their power. And apparently he has the head of like Grandmother Maggot, along with some other like human woman, and then like a third head, because he doesn't have his own head. So the guy has like 3 heads, I think. So they sneak over the guy, and Nayah sees that one of the heads, that the mysterious female head or human head, was actually the Holy Mother, the lady who was killed there right at the beginning of the last book. Anyway, so they pop out and they go back, Shizu and the guy, and so the plan is like Shizu's going to go in along with all of the Zarans who are melee fighters, while Nayah and the prince like attack from a distance. Even though Shizu's like a long distance attacker, she's going to go in and fight head to head or whatever. And so they pop out and they all start going back and forth. And then the guy tries to make a deal with the prince to betray his friends to get like his freedom of his people. And he's like, hell no, fuck you. And then like Nayah gets like offered to be like to betray the Zarans. Like if she does that, then she'll give them like whatever they want, or like help them with whatever, and like stop attacking the city or whatever. And this guy's supposed to be like a right hand man of Yaldabaoth, so I guess he can like be good on his word or whatever. But then like hell no, they're not going to betray their friends. And then Shizu like does a sneak attack from behind, and they go battle, and it's shown in an anime battle. They fight. At some point, Nayah gets blinded, and there's some funny conversation between Shizu and like the servant of Yaldabaoth, where she's like, "Oh, that's the girl with the bow, the bow," and the guy's like, "Oh, that's the one with the bow." And Nayah's like, "The fuck are they talking about?" And then she like shoots the demon with her bow, even though she's blinded, and it like kills him. He's like, "Oh no, I have been defeated." It was a huge celebration afterwards, but they hear that the Human Liberation Army is coming, and so they like gotta get out of there before like they get caught up in this, because the militiamen or whatever aren't going to realize necessarily that the Zarans are helping the humans at this point. A bit later on, after this victory, Nayah becomes like this preacher for the King of Darkness. She's like rallying the people. She's like starting an organization. She's becoming like a rising hero. And then she meets other leaders of like this organization that she's started. And then we found out that Shizu was also worshipped as a savior, because she came in and saved everybody as well. Because when they liberated this town, it was like, it wasn't just the Zarans or the prince they were saving. It was like all the humans and whatnot, right? Because the Zarans are actually working for the bad guys, quote unquote. And then now they're like working for the humans, but they, it's like, oh, we defeated the Zarans, and realized they just went off to the Kingdom of Darkness or whatever. And then we get some like very cute interaction between Nayah and Shizu is really treating Nayah like a daughter. And keep talking about it. She's like, I like you. And I was like, okay, stop being crude. Elsewhere, Gaspara is working on governing. A paladin there's some paladin that's supporting him, and he asks about what to do with Nayah. Sorry, I don't know what I paused. Anyway, there's nothing. They're talking to Gaspar and the paladin are talking about Nayah, and the paladin's like, blah blah blah, and like, what about Nayah and her like cult, essentially? And Gaspar's like, there's nothing to do. Like, she's not lying about anything, and if we move against her, people could like rebel, right? So just leave it alone. And then they talk about Remedia and how she's totally lost since her sister's head came back. She's like completely out of her mind. There's nothing to do with her. It's like kind of just move her aside and get her out of the way. They then get interrupted because a contingent from the south shows up, right? They all these nobles show up. They're like this marquee, like in a marquee in this world, or like kind of generally in European, like French, kind of medieval stuff is like second only to the king. It's like king, marquis, dukes, generally. Right, that's what it seems like here, because he's got like dukes and barons under him. So they're all here. They're talking Game of Thrones shit about Gaspari being a leader, and then these guys backing him up and backing up the right horse and all this stuff. And then we get to the next battle. So we hear about how Remedia defeats some like weak ass demon. Like Shizu and Nayah talk about it, and Nayah's like, "Oh, she defeated this demon," and Shizu's like, "Oh yeah, it was just this kind of demon. That's weak as shit." And then the wall of fire pops up again, and Shizu's like, "Ruh-roh." We then head over to like the southern noble area. They talk about how victory is assured and how maybe they should parlay with the monster people and stop this. And then they see the firewall, and it's Yaldabaoth is back, and he's using his fire aura. We get this like really kind of like intense part of the chapter, or like section where he's just like stomping around killing dudes, but his like its aura of fire is so strong that it just massacres like anybody even comes close to him. And so he starts to get bored, and then the demon kind of like starts feeling bad. He's like, this is pathetic, I feel so terrible. And so he just like wanders off, giving the proof to these guys. So the nobles talk about the situation, everything that happened. The Southerners are freaking out. Gaspar's like calming them down. He's like, hey, I told you this was nuts. That they decide they need to keep focusing on the subhumans and pray that this causes Jabba to leave or to question sticking around or whatnot, and that hopefully this will all work out. So they fight and fight and fight, killing the subhumans until they run out of arrows, like across the board and all this stuff, and Nayah specifically. And then it's like, all right, well, I guess it's time to die. They're still coming. And then Nayah, it looks back and she's like, oh no, we're being attacked from the front here, and there's another army coming from the back there. We're in so much trouble. And then Shizu looks over and she's like, look closer. And so she does, and it's dun dun dun. It's Ainz, and he's leading his new subordinates. Apparently he like landed in the mountains, took over a bunch of people, and like brought them back to fight, right? he's been a busy young man. So they come up and they kick the shit out of Yaldabaoth and his subhuman army. Like Ainz just destroys them completely. And then after that, there's like a scene where like, he's being like worshipped and praised by like Nayah's like contingent, like her little cult, or everyone's like super happy and celebrating and stuff. And that leads us to the epilogue. So in the epilogue, we find out the Northern forces wiped out all the subhumans. They took back all the land in their cities. And then a bit later on, Nayah's riding in a carriage with Ainz again, right? She talks about how the converts are like attending to him constantly, and how he just wanted a break because he got tired of like all the attention or whatnot. And they talk about how Ainz, how he needs to leave and go back to rule his kingdom, and he thinks about like, it's been nice to kind of like chill for a minute and not have to deal with all this bullshit, but I gotta go back, and I'm sure Albedo has a whole bunch of paperwork for him and stuff. And he doesn't want like a big send off. He just wants to like get out of there and move on with his day because he got the maids. Like he showed up because he wanted something, he got them, and now he's gone. Right, but the converts all show up anyway and like cheer him on and everything. And then Nayah says goodbye to Shizu and Ainz, and like Shizu and Nayah kind of like hug it out and stuff. And then Nayah just thinks about she's sad if they leave, but she gets her mood back up thinking about all the work they have to do. She's still the leader of this cult, the Ainz cult, and that she needs to head off and keep preaching the word and such. Back over in the carriage, Ainz is just like relaxing. He's like, I could teleport home right now, but then I'd have a whole bunch of work to do, so I'm just gonna chill. We're just gonna ride this carriage for a little bit, and I'm just gonna like take a little nap hippopotamus and relax. And he then like starts talking to Shizu about how she's grown, how she seems so much more emotional, and like, it's good that she's doing all this stuff. They talk about how her and Nayah are like friends, and then Shizu's like, yeah, I guess we are kind of friends. And they talk about how she's like, would you like to spend time with Nayah some more? And Shizu's like, I would like that. It's like, oh good, we can make like a little portal and you can come back and visit your friend and stuff. And then he talks about like the gimmicks, which is like something to do with Shizu's powers or whatever. And also how she has some like selective amnesia, because there's like part of her abilities or something are like repressed, like in this like selective amnesia thing that he set up as making her like a trap. Like if someone tries to come in and attack Nazarick, he can like spring this trap because anyone who's probing her mind or trying to get the defenses won't know about it because it's like it'll be a total surprise. And then from there, we head over to Gaspar. He's like getting ready to be coronated king of the Holy Kingdom. He's talking to himself about Games of Thrones shit. And then Demiurge shows up, and Gaspar is like, he bows immediately. And Demiurge is like, things are going great. First phase of the plan is excellent. We did everything we meant to do. And we find out that this is not the real Gaspar. This is a doppelganger as well. And that he was killed and frozen a long time ago, because eventually they're going to bring him back and throw him on the ground and be like, he's dead. And then they're going to move on to like phase 2 or something. They then start talking about Nayah and her cult and people praising Ainz, like he's a god or whatever. And Demiurge is like, I'm always impressed by Lord Ainz because this is exactly what I was going to do. I thought this would take years, but he's already created a cult. Like it's like incredibly easy to like do this transfer of power if you have like half the country worshiping this guy. So you can just be like, Ainz is now the ruler, and everyone's going to be like, yes, that is what we want. But he's just like always impressed by the way Ainz acts without like, it just makes everything in his life easier, even though this whole thing just happened like by accident. But he doesn't know that, right? That's not how he acts. They then talk about Remedia's death and how they're like really making all the nobles like hate her and cause her to like be disliked, so that when they can just like saunter her off and kill her, no one's going to care or anything. And how it's just great. And the Demiurge leaves, and the doppelganger like hears the people celebrating, and he's like, oh, you fools, like I hate human beings, blah 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 blah. And that wraps up chapter 13, or light novel 13 of Overlord, which is the end of the Holy Kingdom arc. And then in 2 weeks we'll pick up book 14, which is what season 3 is based on of the anime series. But first we're going to watch the movie, like I said, next week, and then the week after that, we'll hit volume 14. I think that's how I have it set up. Something like that. And then, yeah, and then we'll move on till we get to volume 16, which there's supposed to be 2 more volumes written, but they have not been written. This guy's pulling a J.R.R. Martin? No, Martin's his name. But anyway, thanks for listening in, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye.